Family called me a disappointment at dinner. You'll never amount to anything. I stayed quiet, left. Little they didn't know, I signed $3 million book deal that morning. 2 months later, Dad's friend showed him a local. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat at that dinner table, my phone buzzing in my purse with congratulatory messages from my agent, while my father carved into his prime rib and launched into another lecture about my life choices. "Patricia, you're 28 years old," Dad said, not even looking at me as he spoke. "When are you going to stop playing around with this writing hobby and get a real job?" My mother nodded in agreement, dabbing at her lips with a cloth napkin. "Your sister has already made partner at her law firm. Even your younger brother is earning 6 figures in finance now." I picked up my mashed potatoes, feeling the familiar weight of their disappointment settle over my shoulders like a heavy blanket. This was supposed to be a nice family dinner at the Sterling House, the upscale restaurant where we'd celebrated every major milestone for as long as I could remember. My sister Jennifer's promotion, my brother Marcus's engagement. Never anything of mine. "I'm doing fine," I managed to say quietly. "Fine." My father finally looked at me, his eyes sharp with judgment. "You're waitressing at a coffee shop and living in a studio apartment in the worst part of town. That's not fine, Patricia. That's failure." Jennifer sat down her wine glass with a soft clink. "Dad's right. I tried to get you an admin position at my firm last year, but you turned it down." Do you know how embarrassing that was for me? "I didn't want to work in a law office," I said. "I'm a writer." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed right there at the table. "A writer, Patricia. You've been working on the same book for 3 years. At some point, you have to accept that it's not going to happen." My mother reached over and patted my hand in what I'm sure she thought was a comforting gesture. "Honey, we're just worried about you. You're getting older and you have nothing to show for all these years. No career, no husband, no stability. We just want you to be realistic about your limitations." The waiter arrived with dessert menus, and I excused myself to the bathroom. Standing in front of the mirror, I looked at my reflection and saw what they saw. Someone small, someone forgettable, someone who would never measure up. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Rachel, my literary agent. "Have you told your family yet? This is huge." I hadn't told them. How could I when 12 hours earlier I'd sat in a glass conference room in Manhattan and signed a 3-book deal with Blackwood Publishing for $3 million. The advance check was already being processed. My debut novel, The Invisible Daughter, would hit shelves in 8 months with a massive marketing campaign behind it. Rachel had spent the entire morning on the phone with me, outlining the book tour, the publicity events, the foreign rights deals already generating interest. But sitting at that dinner table, surrounded by my family's casual cruelty disguised as concern, I'd felt that old familiar instinct to make myself smaller, to apologize for taking up space. My mother had been dismissing my dreams since I was a child. My father had never read a single one of my short stories, not even the one that won a national writing competition when I was 16. Jennifer had once told her friends at a party that I was basically unemployed, and Marcus had introduced me to his colleagues as my sister who waitresses. I returned to the table and sat down without ordering dessert. "So," my father continued, as if there hadn't been a break in the conversation, "I spoke with Gerald Morrison at the club. He said his company is hiring for their data entry department. The pay isn't great, but it's a start. You could work your way up." "I don't want to do data entry." "You don't want to do anything," Jennifer interjected. "That's your problem, Patricia. You think you're too good for real work. I work 40 hours a week at the coffee shop." "That's not a career," my mother said softly. "That's just existing. We want more for you than just existing." My father signaled for the check. "We're not going to support this delusion anymore. Patricia, you're almost 30. It's time to grow up and accept reality. You're never going to be a successful writer. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start building an actual life." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You're never going to be a successful writer." I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Thank you for dinner." "Where are you going?" my mother asked. "We haven't even had coffee yet." "I have to work early tomorrow." My father shook his head in disappointment. "Always running away when things get difficult." "That's exactly why you'll never amount to anything, Patricia. You don't have the strength to face hard truths." I grabbed my purse and walked out of the Sterling House without looking back. The October air was crisp against my face, and I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the cold seep into my skin. My hands were shaking, but not from the chill. The subway ride back to my apartment was quiet. An older woman sat across from me, reading a paperback novel with a creased spine. I wondered if she knew that someone had poured their heart into those pages, had stayed up late and woken up early and sacrificed and doubted and persevered to create that story. I wondered if she knew that someone's family had probably told that writer they were wasting their time. My studio apartment was small, but it was mine. The walls were lined with bookshelves I built myself, filled with novels that had saved me when my own family couldn't. My desk sat by the window, covered with notebooks and printed manuscript pages. This was where I'd written The Invisible Daughter, working after my shifts at the coffee shop, typing until my fingers cramped, revising until the words finally said what I needed them to say. The book was about a woman whose family never really saw her, who spent her whole life trying to earn their approval until she finally realized she didn't need it. It was fiction, but it was also the truest thing I'd ever written. I made myself tea and sat at my desk, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with another message from Rachel. "When are you going to tell them?" I typed back, "Not yet. Let them think what they want for a little while longer." The weeks that followed were surreal. I went to work at the coffee shop, smiling at regulars, and perfecting latte art while knowing that my life was about to change completely. I met with my editor at Blackwood, a brilliant woman named Patricia Chen, who understood my book in ways that made me want to cry with relief. We worked on final edits, discussed cover designs, planned the marketing strategy. "Your story is going to resonate with so many people," Patricia told me during one of our meetings. "Women who've been underestimated, dismissed, told they're not enough. This book is for all of them." I attended a photo shoot for the author portrait that would appear on the back cover and inside the book jacket. The photographer, a kind woman named Diane, had me sit by a window with natural light streaming in, and she kept saying, "That's it right there. You look powerful. You look like someone who knows her worth." I didn't feel powerful. I felt terrified. The advanced money had hit my bank account, and I'd stared at the numbers for a full 10 minutes, convinced it was an error. But it was real. All of it was real. My family didn't call after that dinner. They never did when they deemed me sufficiently chastised. I was supposed to come crawling back, apologizing for being difficult, promising to do better. Instead, I was working with a marketing team at one of the biggest publishing houses in the country, discussing how my book tour would hit 15 cities across the United States. I gave my notice at the coffee shop. My manager, Tom, was the first person outside of the publishing world I told about the book deal. He'd always been kind to me, never making me feel less than for being a waitress with bigger dreams. "I knew you'd make it," he said, pulling me into a hug. "You've got something special, Patricia. I'm glad the world is finally going to see it." I found a new apartment in a better neighborhood, nothing extravagant, but a one-bedroom with an actual office space where I could write. I bought a comfortable desk chair and a new laptop. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a gray tabby I named Hemingway, who sat on my desk while I worked on the second book in my contract. The publication date for The Invisible Daughter was set for June 15th. Blackwood planned a major launch, with advance copies going out to reviewers and book bloggers in April. The early reviews started coming in, and they were better than I'd ever imagined. A stunning debut that captures the pain of familial disappointment and the power of self-discovery. Patricia Mitchell writes with devastating honesty about what it means to be invisible in your own family. A must-read ad for anyone who's ever felt like they weren't enough. Rachel called me almost daily with updates. Foreign rights had sold to 12 countries. Book clubs were already requesting bulk orders. A production company had reached out about film rights. My life was transforming so quickly, I could barely process it. I thought about calling my family several times. I drafted texts to my mother explaining everything, but I always deleted them before sending. They'd made their opinion of me clear. They'd looked at me across that dinner table and told me I would never amount to anything. They dismissed my dreams with a casual cruelty of people who'd never believed in me to begin with. So I waited. In May, 1 month before publication, my publisher organized a book launch event at a prestigious bookstore in Manhattan. The invite list included book reviewers, literary agents, editors, and local media. It was going to be my first public appearance as a published author, and I was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. The display copies of The Invisible Daughter arrived at my apartment in a box that I almost couldn't bring myself to open. When I finally did, pulling out the first copy and running my fingers over the embossed title on the cover, I started crying. Not sad tears, but the kind that come from a deep well of vindication and relief and pure joy. The book was beautiful. The cover featured a woman's silhouette against a window, partially faded, as if she was disappearing, or perhaps finally coming into focus. My name was printed there in elegant letters, Patricia Mitchell. My author bio on the back flap mentioned my years working in the service industry while writing, framing it as determination rather than failure. I took a photo of the book and sent it to Rachel with a simple message. It's real. She replied immediately, "You did this. You made this happen. I'm so proud of you." The book launch was scheduled for a Friday evening. I bought a new dress, had my hair professionally styled, and practiced my reading over and over until the words felt natural coming out of my mouth. Rachel would introduce me, and then I'd read the first chapter of the book before taking questions from the audience. I still hadn't told my family. The invitations to the launch had gone out to industry people, not to them. They had no idea that their disappointing daughter was about to step into a completely different life. 2 weeks before the launch, my father's friend Howard stopped by their house. Howard was a real estate agent who'd known my dad for 20 years, one of those men who showed up at every barbecue and holiday party, always with a story about some property deal or market trend. My mother told me later what happened, though at the time I had no idea the conversation was taking place. Howard had been downtown showing properties and stopped into a bookstore to kill time between appointments. There, in the window display, he saw a poster advertising an upcoming author event. Debut novelist Patricia Mitchell reads from her book, The Invisible Daughter, the poster announced, with the date and time of my launch event. The poster included my author photo, the one from the professional shoot where I'd looked confident and accomplished. Howard stood on the sidewalk staring at that poster, then pulled out his phone and took a picture. He drove directly to my parents' house. "Robert," he said when my father opened the door, "is your daughter Patricia a writer?" My father's expression had apparently gone cold. "She thinks she is." "Why?" Howard showed him the photo on his phone. "Because she's got a book coming out, and the bookstore downtown is making a pretty big deal about it." My father took the phone, staring at the image. My mother came into the hallway, asking what was going on. Jennifer was there too, visiting for the weekend with her husband. "This has to be a mistake," my mother said, looking at the photo. "Patricia would have told us if she'd gotten a book published." Howard shrugged. "That's definitely her picture. Same Patricia, right? Your youngest daughter." Marcus arrived shortly after, summoned by a group text from Jennifer. The four of them stood in my parents' living room, passing around Howard's phone, looking at the poster advertising my book launch. "How is this possible?" Jennifer asked. "She was waitressing at a coffee shop. She must have self-published," Marcus said dismissively. "Anyone can do that now. It doesn't mean anything." But my father was already on his computer, pulling up the bookstore's website. He found the event listing, clicked through to the book's page on the publisher's website. There it was, my book with my name, published by Blackwood Publishing. "Blackwood is a major publisher," my father said slowly. "This isn't self-published." My mother sat down on the couch, her hand over her mouth. "She didn't tell us." "Why would she?" Jennifer said, and there was something bitter in her voice. "After the way we talked to her at dinner." "We were trying to help her," my father snapped. "We were trying to get her to face reality." "Apparently she did," Marcus muttered, still looking at the website. "This reality just wasn't what we expected." Howard excused himself, clearly uncomfortable with the family tension. After he left, my parents, Jennifer, and Marcus sat in silence, processing what they discovered. My father was the first to reach for his phone to call me. It went to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He sent a text. "Patricia, we need to talk. It's important." I saw the message but didn't respond. I was in the middle of a meeting with Patricia and the marketing team, discussing the final details of the launch event. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from my family, but I silenced it and focused on the work in front of me. When I finally listened to my father's voicemail that evening, his voice was strained and formal. "Patricia, Howard showed us a poster about your book. We'd like to know why you didn't tell us about this. Please call us back." I deleted the message and poured myself a glass of wine. Hemingway curled up on my lap, purring contentedly. Through my apartment window, the city stretched out before me, full of possibilities I was only beginning to explore. The next morning, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Jennifer called. Voicemail. Then Marcus. I turned off my phone and went to my final walkthrough at the bookstore where the launch would be held. The events coordinator, a woman named Michelle, was enthusiastic and organized. She showed me where I'd be sitting, where the books would be displayed, how the signing table would be set up. The bookstore had ordered 300 copies of The Invisible Daughter for the event, and they'd already sold half through pre-orders. "We're expecting a really great turnout," Michelle said. "Your publisher has been promoting this heavily, and we've had tons of interest from local book clubs and writing groups." I practiced standing at the podium, imagining the room full of people who'd come to hear me read from my book. People who believed in my story, who saw value in my words, people who didn't think I was a disappointment. My family continued trying to reach me. The voicemails evolved from confused to frustrated to almost apologetic. My mother left a message saying, "Patricia, sweetheart, we just want to understand what's happening. Why didn't you tell us about your book? We're your family. We love you." But love wasn't the same as belief. Love wasn't the same as support. They'd loved me in their way, I suppose, but they'd never seen me as anything more than a failure who needed to be fixed. Jennifer sent a long text message. "Patricia, I know things were tense at dinner, but we're happy for you about the book. Really. We just don't understand why you kept this from us. Can we at least talk about it? Dad is really upset that he found out from Howard instead of from you." I almost replied to that one. Almost. But then I remembered her voice saying, "Do you know how embarrassing that was for me?" I remembered Marcus laughing at my dreams. I remembered my father's eyes sharp with judgment, telling me I'd never amount to anything. 3 days before the launch, my publisher sent out a press release. A local news website picked it up, running a feature article about me with the headline, "Local Woman's Debut Novel Explores Family Dynamics and Self-Worth." The article mentioned my 3-book deal with Blackwood and included quotes from Patricia about why they'd been so excited to acquire my work. "Patricia Mitchell's voice is authentic and powerful," Patricia was quoted as saying. "She writes about universal experiences with specificity and grace. We're thrilled to be publishing her work." The article spread on social media. People from my neighborhood, from the coffee shop, from my writing workshop, all reached out with congratulations. Tom, my former manager, shared the article with a caption, "Told you she was special." My parents saw the article. My father's friend Jerry called to ask if the Patricia Mitchell in the article was his daughter. My mother's book club started buzzing about it. Jennifer's colleagues at the law firm mentioned it. Marcus's fiancé read the article and asked why he'd never mentioned his sister was a published author. The morning of the launch, I woke up to find dozens of messages from my family. My father had sent an email asking if they could attend the event. My mother had left a voicemail saying she wanted to be there to support me. Jennifer had texted asking for details about the launch time and location. I read through all the messages while drinking my coffee, Hemingway purring beside me. The bookstore event was public, so technically they could come without my permission, but I knew showing up uninvited after months of silence would be awkward for everyone involved. I finally responded to my mother's voicemail with a simple text. "The launch is at 7 p.m. at Riverside Books on Main Street. It's open to the public." I didn't add anything else. "No, I'd love for you to be there." "No, I hope you can make it." Just the facts, delivered in the same neutral tone they'd used when telling me about data entry positions and my limitations. The afternoon before the launch, I met Rachel at a cafe near the bookstore. She'd flown in from Boston specifically for this event, and seeing her familiar face helped calm the nerves that had been building all week. "How are you feeling?" she asked, studying my face with that careful attention she'd always given me, even before I was making her any money. "Terrified, excited, vindicated." Rachel smiled. "Vindicated is good. You've earned that feeling. Your family knows now?" "They saw a poster and figured it out. Are they coming tonight?" "Maybe. I told them they could, but I don't know if they will." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens tonight, remember that you did this. You wrote a beautiful book. You persevered through rejection and doubt and people who didn't believe in you. This is your moment, Patricia. Don't let anyone take it from you." By 6:30, I was at the bookstore, touching up my makeup in the bathroom and trying to steady my breathing. Michelle gave me a reassuring smile and told me everything was set up perfectly. Through the bathroom door, I could hear the murmur of people arriving, filling the seats that had been arranged in neat rows facing the podium. At 6:45, I peeked out from the back room and saw the bookstore crowded with people. Every seat was filled, and people were standing along the walls. I recognized some faces from my writing workshop, friends I'd made in the neighborhood, regulars from the coffee shop. Tom was there, sitting in the third row with a huge smile on his face. And in the back, standing near the psychology section because there were no seats left, were my parents, Jennifer, Marcus, and his fiancé. They'd come. My mother was dressed nicely, clutching her purse with both hands. My father stood stiffly beside her, looking uncomfortable but present. Jennifer kept glancing around at the crowd, perhaps surprised by how many people had shown up. Marcus had his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Michelle gave me a 5-minute warning, and I took a final deep breath. My book was stacked on the signing table, the cover gleaming under the bookstore lights. Rachel stood near the podium, ready to introduce me. At 7:00 exactly, Michelle welcomed everyone and then handed the microphone to Rachel, who gave a beautiful introduction about my work, my dedication, and the power of the invisible daughter. She talked about receiving my manuscript and knowing immediately that it was something special, about working with me through revisions and watching me grow as a writer. Patricia Mitchell is the kind of writer we need more of, Rachel said. Someone who tells uncomfortable truths with compassion, who creates characters that feel real because they come from a place of deep understanding. Please join me in welcoming Patricia Mitchell. The applause was overwhelming. I walked to the podium on shaking legs, adjusting the microphone and looking out at all those faces. People who'd come to hear my story, people who believed in my work. I opened my book to the first chapter and began to read. My voice was steady, stronger than I'd expected. The chapter I'd chosen was about the protagonist's relationship with her family, about growing up feeling invisible, about the moment she realized she'd been seeking validation from people who would never be capable of giving it. The room was silent, except for my voice. People leaned forward in their seats. Some nodded along with certain passages. I saw a woman in the front row wipe at her eyes. When I finished reading, the applause came again, and Michelle opened the floor for questions. Hands shot up immediately. A young woman asked about my writing process. A book club member asked about the themes of family dynamics in the novel. A man asked if the story was autobiographical. All fiction is autobiographical in some way, I said carefully. I wrote about emotions and experiences that felt true to me, even if the specific events are invented. I think every writer pulls from their own life, their own understanding of how people hurt each other and heal. More questions followed. Someone asked about the ending of the book. Someone else asked about my influences. A woman wanted to know if there would be a sequel, and I explained that I'd signed a 3-book deal, though the next books wouldn't be direct sequels but would explore similar themes. My family stood in the back, listening. My mother's eyes never left me. My father's expression had shifted from stern to something I couldn't quite read. Jennifer looked proud and sad at the same time, and Marcus seemed genuinely impressed. After the Q&A, I moved to the signing table. The line stretched through the bookstore and out the door. People came forward with copies of my book, sharing stories about their own families, thanking me for writing something that resonated with their experiences. Tom waited in line with 3 copies, 1 for himself and 2 for gifts. "You are amazing," he said when it was his turn. "I'm so glad you didn't give up. Thank you for believing in me, when I was just your waitress who was always tired from staying up late writing." He grinned. "You were never just anything, Patricia." The line continued for over an hour. My hand cramped from signing so many books, but I didn't care. Each signature felt like a small victory, a tiny piece of proof that my father had been wrong about me. Finally, after most of the crowd had cleared, my family approached the signing table. They'd been waiting, letting everyone else go first, and now they stood before me with uncertain expressions. My mother spoke first. "Patricia, honey, that was beautiful. Your reading was beautiful." "Thank you. We had no idea," Jennifer said, "about any of this. The book deal, the publication, everything." I set down my signing pen and looked at them directly. "I signed the contract the morning of that dinner, the one where you all told me I'd never amount to anything." My father flinched, actually flinched. "Patricia, we didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You meant every word. You thought I was a failure. You were embarrassed by me. You wanted me to give up on writing and accept some data entry position because you couldn't imagine a world where I actually succeeded." "We were worried about you," my mother said, her voice small. "No, you were disappointed in me. There's a difference. You looked at my life and saw someone who wasn't measuring up to your expectations. You never asked about my writing. You never read anything I'd written. You never once considered that maybe I knew what I was doing, that maybe I was working towards something you couldn't see." Marcus cleared his throat. "You're right. We should have been more supportive." "Should have been." I shook my head. "For years, you all made me feel like I was less than, like my dreams were childish and my goals unrealistic. And when I finally achieved something incredible, you only found out because Dad's friend saw a poster in a bookstore window." "Why didn't you tell us?" Jennifer asked. "When you signed the contract, why didn't you tell us at that dinner?" "Because you'd already decided who I was. You'd already written me off as a disappointing daughter who would never succeed. I wasn't going to give you the satisfaction of doubting me even more, of dismissing this the way you dismissed everything else." My father stepped forward, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Regret, maybe. Shame. "Patricia, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. You're right about everything. We failed you as a family. We should have supported you, should have believed in you. We were wrong." The apology hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to accept it, to fold back into the family dynamic and pretend everything was fine now. But another part of me, the part that had written The Invisible Daughter, the part that had survived their dismissal and succeeded anyway, knew that some things couldn't be fixed with simple apologies. "I appreciate that," I said quietly. "But apologies don't erase what happened. They don't give me back all those years of feeling like I wasn't good enough. They don't undo the damage of being told I'd never succeed by the people who were supposed to believe in me most." "What can we do?" my mother asked, tears in her eyes. "How can we make this right?" I looked at each of them in turn. My father, who'd always been so certain about everything. My mother, who'd wanted me to be someone I wasn't. Jennifer, who'd been embarrassed by my choices. Marcus, who'd laughed at my dreams. "You can read my book," I said finally. "Really read it. And maybe if you do, you'll understand why I couldn't tell you about any of this. Why I needed to do this on my own without your approval or validation." "We will," Jennifer promised. "I already bought a copy. I'm going to read it this weekend." "We're proud of you," my father said, and his voice cracked slightly. "I know we have no right to be after everything we said, but we are. You proved us all wrong, and I'm glad you did." I nodded slowly. "I didn't do this to prove you wrong. I did this because I had a story to tell, because I had to write it. Your opinion, good or bad, didn't change what I needed to do." "Can we start over?" my mother asked. "Can we try to have a better relationship, one where we actually support you?" "Maybe," I said honestly, "but it's going to take time. You can't just show up at my book launch and expect everything to be okay. You hurt me deeply for a long time. That doesn't heal overnight." "We understand," Marcus said. "We'll give you space, but please know that we're here whenever you're ready. And we really are proud of you, Patricia. This is incredible." They bought copies of my book, and I signed them with simple inscriptions. To Mom and Dad, to Jennifer, to Marcus. No additional messages, no declarations of love or forgiveness, just their names and my signature. After they left, Rachel came over and put her arm around my shoulders. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, I don't know. They apologized, but it feels too little, too late." "You don't have to forgive them just because they showed up," Rachel said gently. "You get to decide what kind of relationship you want with them moving forward." "I know, it's just, I spent so many years wanting their approval, and now that my book is successful, now that I've proven myself, suddenly they're proud of me. It feels conditional." "It probably is conditional, at least partly, but that says more about them than it does about you. You did this, Patricia. You wrote a brilliant book. You persevered through rejection and self-doubt and a family who didn't believe in you. That's entirely your achievement, no matter what they think or feel about it now." The bookstore staff began cleaning up, and I helped fold chairs and reorganize displays. Michelle thanked me profusely, saying it was one of their most successful author events in years. The bookstore had sold all 300 copies they'd ordered, plus taken pre-orders for more. Walking back to my apartment that night, the city felt different somehow, lighter, like I'd shed something heavy I'd been carrying for years. My phone buzzed with congratulations from people who'd attended the launch, from friends who'd seen the photos online, from readers who'd already finished the book and wanted to tell me how much it meant to them. My family's apology sat in my chest like a stone. I wanted to forgive them. Part of me still craved their approval, even after everything. But I also knew that forgiveness had to come on my terms, in my time, if it came at all. The next morning, I woke to find that The Invisible Daughter had hit #1 on several bestseller lists. My publisher was already talking about a second printing. Interview requests were flooding in. My life was changing in ways I'd barely begun to process. My mother called, and this time I answered. Patricia, I just finished your book. That was fast. I couldn't put it down. Her voice was thick with emotion. Is that how you felt growing up? Is that how we made you feel? I sat down on my couch, Hemingway jumping into my lap. Yes. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. We thought we were helping. Thought we were guiding you toward a more stable life. We never realized we were making you feel invisible. That's the thing about being invisible, I said quietly. The people making you disappear rarely realize they're doing it. My mother was crying now. I failed you as a parent. I see that now. Reading your book, seeing yourself through your character's eyes, I understand what we did to you, and I'm so, so sorry. I know you thought you were doing the right thing, I said, but your version of the right thing didn't leave any room for who I actually was. You wanted me to be Jennifer or Marcus, and I was never going to be them. You're right. You're absolutely right. Can I ask you something? Okay. Can we try again? Not go back to how things were, but start fresh. Build something new, where we actually see you, where we support who you are, instead of trying to make you into someone else. I looked out my window at the morning light filtering through the buildings. I don't know, Mom. I want to say yes, but I'm not sure I trust that this won't just go back to the way it was before. You're proud of me now because I'm successful in a way you understand. But what happens if my next book doesn't do as well? What happens if I make choices you don't agree with? Will you go back to treating me like a disappointment? No, she said firmly. I promise you, Patricia, that won't happen. I've learned my lesson. We all have. Please give us a chance to prove that we can be the family you deserved all along. I need time, I told her. I need to figure out who I am without constantly trying to earn your approval. This book launch, this success, it can't be about finally measuring up to your standards. It has to be about me achieving something I worked hard for, something that matters to me. I understand. Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The success of my book felt vindicating, but it also felt complicated. I'd wanted to prove my family wrong, and I had. But in doing so, I'd also realized that their opinion of me, good or bad, didn't define my worth. I'd written a book that resonated with people because it was true to my experience, not because I was trying to impress anyone. Over the following weeks, my book climbed higher on bestseller lists. The reviews were overwhelmingly positive. Readers reached out through social media to share their own stories of feeling invisible in their families. The book sparked conversations about parental expectations and the pressure to pursue conventional success. A production company made an offer for the film rights. Foreign editions started appearing. Book clubs everywhere were reading The Invisible Daughter and discussing its themes. I did interviews for podcasts and magazines, always careful to speak honestly about my experience without completely villainizing my family. They meant well, I said in one interview, but good intentions don't always lead to healthy relationships. Sometimes the people who love us most can hurt us deeply, not out of malice, but out of their own limited vision of what our lives should look like. My family read that interview. My father sent me a text saying simply, "You're more generous than we deserve." Slowly, cautiously, we began rebuilding our relationship. Not the old one, but something new and more honest. They asked about my writing process and actually listened to my answers. They attended a reading I did in their city, sitting in the front row this time instead of hiding in the back. They introduced me to their friends as our daughter, the best-selling author. And while part of me cringed at them taking pride in something they'd once dismissed, I also saw their genuine effort to change. Jennifer and I met for coffee, just the two of us. "I'm sorry I was such a snob about your writing," she said. "I think I was jealous, actually. You were brave enough to pursue what you really wanted, and I just did what was expected of me." You like being a lawyer, though, right? I do, but I wonder sometimes what I would have chosen if I hadn't been so focused on making Mom and Dad proud. Reading your book made me think about all the ways I try to be perfect according to their standards, instead of figuring out what I actually wanted. Marcus called to tell me that reading my book had made him reconsider how he talked to his own daughter about her interests. "She wants to be a dancer," he said, "and I was about to give her the same speech Dad gave you about practical careers. But after reading your book, I realized I was about to become the exact parent I read about on those pages. So instead, I signed her up for dance classes and told her I'd support whatever path she chooses." These small moments of growth and understanding helped ease the hurt, though it never completely disappeared. I'd learned that some wounds leave scars, and that was okay. The scars reminded me of how far I'd come, of what I'd survived and overcome. My second book came out a year later to even greater success. My third book solidified my place as an author whose work resonated with readers seeking authentic stories about family, identity, and self-worth. With each book, I felt more secure in my own voice, less concerned with external validation. My family came to every launch, every reading, every award ceremony. They'd learned to be supportive, to be present, to believe in me. It wasn't perfect. Old patterns occasionally surfaced, old hurts sometimes stung. But it was better, honest, real. 5 years after that first book launch, I was invited to speak at a writers' conference. A young woman approached me after my panel, clutching a dog-eared copy of The Invisible Daughter. "Your book saved me," she said quietly. "My family was telling me the same things yours told you, that I'd never make it, that I should give up on writing. But reading your story gave me the courage to keep going. I just sold my first novel." I hugged her, feeling tears prick my eyes. "That's incredible. Congratulations." "Did you ever forgive your family?" she asked, "for not believing in you?" I considered the question carefully. I forgave them for being human, for making mistakes, for having limited vision. But I also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. We have a different relationship now, one built on honesty rather than unmet expectations. It's better this way. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Thank you for writing that book, for telling the truth about how it feels to be dismissed by the people who should support you most. It made me feel less alone." "That's why I wrote it," I said. "To tell people like us that we're not alone, that our dreams matter, that we don't need permission from anyone to pursue what sets our souls on fire." That night, lying in bed in my comfortable apartment with Hemingway purring beside me, I thought about that dinner at the Sterling House years ago. My father's words echoed in my memory. "You'll never amount to anything, Patricia. You don't have the strength to face hard truths." He'd been wrong about so many things, but he'd been right about one. I had faced hard truths. The truth that my family's love was conditional. The truth that I'd spent years seeking approval from people incapable of giving it. The truth that I had to choose myself, my dreams, my voice, even if it meant standing alone. And in facing those truths, I'd found my strength. Not the kind of strength that comes from pleasing others or meeting their expectations, but the kind that comes from knowing your worth, regardless of external validation. My phone buzzed with the text from my mother. "Just finished reading your new manuscript. It's your best work yet. I'm so proud of the writer you've become, but more than that, I'm proud of the woman you've always been. Love you." I smiled, typing back a simple, "Love you too." It wasn't the relationship I dreamed of as a child, desperate for my parents' approval, but it was real, and it was honest, and it was enough, because I'd learned that the most important approval I needed was my own. And I'd given that to myself the moment I decided my dreams were worth pursuing, regardless of who believed in them. That was the real story, not the revenge of proving everyone wrong, but the liberation of no longer needing to prove anything at all.